All right. So one more reminder for anyone who's just come in, get really comfortable, have something to write with and something to write on, because this session, you're going to start to collect what comes up through you, but all you have to do is listen. So there is no other ask than to listen, but have those things around. So as you listen, what comes up for you, you can capture. I'm going to remind you of that multiple times. Welcome and thank you for being here today. Thank you to yourselves for giving yourselves the space, the gift of space to be here today. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see this? Is that working for you, Surin? All right. So welcome to the Life Brief. This is a practice for you and only you in the privacy of your space. So I'm going to invite you right up front to drop out of your mind, your head, your tick, tick, tick monkey mind. And I want you to drop in somewhere deeper. Maybe it's your gut. For those who dare, your heart. I want you to let go of everything that you were doing, thinking before you came into this session, and just be right here with me. So I'm Bonnie, and my job for the last 30 years has been as a brand strategist. Much of that time at a storied agency, creative agency, Goodby Silverstein Partners. And my job as a brand strategist is to make meaning out of messiness. I help companies and brands get clear about who they are and where they want to go. As a strategist, my job is to get to the essence of things, the essence of what matters, and then to translate that into an ambitious, juicy framework or brief that helps companies be really clear about where they're going. Not just clear, but invigorated and inspired. And in 2010, I did this for my own life. And since then, I've been doing this for everyday people. And today I have the pleasure of doing this for the leader inside you, each of you. So the question I'm going to ask you throughout this next hour is, what do you want? I love this question. As Colleen DeCourcy from Wyden & Kennedy used to say, there's some questions that just cut right through the bullshit. This is one of them. What do you want? So I'm not asking you, what do you feel like? What are you thinking? I'm not asking you what your people, your partners, your family want for you. I'm asking you, what do you want in your heart of hearts? What do you want that maybe you haven't even allowed yourself to admit to yourself? Now, anything that came up for you in that moment, when I asked the question, when you see that question, I want you to write down on whatever you have in front of you, your pad, your notebook, your chicken scratch, it doesn't matter, but I want whatever comes up through you to come out onto the page. That, in essence, is the life brief practice. We'll go into it a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about the whole arc of the life brief in this session. You're not going to get all the way through it because this is something I teach over 3 weeks online or at a 5-day retreat. But you will start collecting your ingredients and you're going to see the arc of how this practice works. So I'm going to keep asking you this question throughout. What do you want? And all you have to do is allow whatever comes up without judgment, without editing, to come out onto the page. So that is your job through this session. And today I'm going to share some stories of mine, but make no mistake, this session is all about you. Your story is not my story. Your circumstances are not my circumstances. But sometimes when we listen to somebody else's story, what it does is it stimulates the answers to come out through us. So that's all you have to do is listen and allow that stuff to come out of you. So what is the life brief? The life brief is, in essence, a creative brief for your life. What I love about this audience, a marketing audience, a business audience, is I think there's a lot of familiarity with this is. So I'm not going to go super deep, but for those of you who are new to it, a creative brief is the tool of every strategist and creative agency. It's a sharp distillation of what's essential, expressed in a way that catapults ideas and action. The life brief is not a creative brief technically, but it is taking the same process and the same practice and the same principles and applying it to our personal lives. And today we're going to talk about it through the lens of you as a leader. And what it looks like is slightly different. It doesn't look like a creative brief that we use in agencies. It's 5 declarative statements about what you want, summed up in a single-minded, sharp, sticky handle that tattoos in your mind so that it is always with you. And that starts to act as your clarifying North Star and filter for decisions and actions. And so we're going to start that process together today. And I don't have to tell you why this matters for leaders or leadership. And even if you don't lead a company or a division or a group, you do lead something in your life, even if it's yourself. And what we know in business today, I don't have to go deep into it, is there are seismic shifts happening for us in politics, in business, in culture, in identity. These shifts are global, they're local, they're personal, they're intergenerational. People are noticing acutely more than ever that the lives they're living, that the businesses they're leading may not be what they used to know. The world is no longer defined by binaries or this or that choices. It's not black and white. Instead, people are embracing openness and fluidity when it comes to work, healthcare, education, monogamy, gender, sexuality. All of these shifts are happening at a rapid pace. Whether you're talking about your customers, your employees, or your family, your interpersonal communities, they expect values and value from you and how you show up. They're expecting responsiveness and responsibility, feedback and flexibility, adaptability. People demand more of their leaders today. I know this, I'm feeling it, and I'm experiencing it every day. They expect not only accountability to the business, but also accountability to higher outcomes. They want leaders who lead by example. And the question is, are you clear about the example you want to set? And that's what we're talking about today. Because when you get clear about what matters most to you as a leader, you can then get creative and courageous about how you show up, how you lead. For leaders, I think there's nothing more important than clarity, nothing more crucial. And we're not talking about a one and done clarity. So this is not goal planning or a checklist. This is about cultivating an ongoing practice of clarity and intention and action in every moment of your leadership. So it's really important to note that the life brief is a practice, not a plan. So it gets easier the more you engage with it, the more you do it. It's not one and done. I have a poet and teacher that I've worked with. His name is Roger Housden, and he says, your plans are too small for you to live. And what he means is that we cannot plan for the unseen. We cannot plan for what we can't predict. And no one knows this more acutely than business leaders. It's as if the ground is always shifting underneath our feet. What used to work no longer applies. What got you here won't get you there. And the rules of today will not be relevant tomorrow. So the life brief is a way to look up from your plans, be present with yourself and your surroundings and the people you lead. It's a practice of permission, experimentation, letting go, hearing and heeding your own intuition and voice as a leader. And once you uncover the essence of your truth as a leader, you can then find the simplest path to cut through chaos, complexity, confusion, whatever it is, and whatever challenge is facing you. Over the last 13 years, I have written briefs for how I want to show up in my marriage, as a parent, as a leader, in my work, when it comes to wealth, and certainly when it comes to myself and my own replenishment. It has deepened and saved my marriage not once, but twice. It's centered my parenting and propelled my career, and has centered and kept me present as a leader, and made me braver. It has given me extreme focus. I've learned to quiet my inner critic, strengthen my muscles for taking leaps and risks, grown my capacity for trust and faith that those leaps will pay off. And it has allowed me to lead centered in my values, do work that I care about, and juggle all the different parts of my life in a way that's sustainable, even in the hardest moments. It has helped me find a rhythm and help me maintain it. Does that mean it's been an easy path? No, because there's no such thing. But has it been a rewarding one and a fulfilling one? Absolutely. And the difference is ending each day feeling soul spent, satisfied, versus wrung out empty. And this is the path that I know that you can walk. So I'm going to just share what's happened over the course of the last 3 years and how the life brief has played a role in my own leadership. The pandemic rearranged the furniture of our lives, all of us, at a global scale. It's something collective that we get to share. And at the center of the life brief are questions that we often want to avoid, but hold the keys to where we want to go. And for me, in 2020, I was confronted by these questions. Who am I? What informs my leadership? How have I been showing up? What do I believe in? What am I devoted to? What's worth fighting for me as a leader? And when I think about myself and the legacy I want to leave, how I want to better our agency, the people around me, what am I willing to risk? So those questions took me back, way back to my start. This is me. I immigrated from Taipei, Taiwan when I was 6 years old. At school, I moved into a suburb in Southern California near Los Angeles. I was one of the few, if not the only, brown kid in a sea of white. And as a result, I navigated the casual and all too common racism of the time. At home, I had to weather the storms of my dad's depression and alcoholism as he struggled to make it in America. He was laid off from work more than once. He came from a really wealthy prestigious family who lost everything during the Cultural Revolution when they left as refugees to Taiwan, where I was born. Those are my grandparents, my dad's parents. And it was hard for my dad. It was really hard. He was laid off more than once. And then he tried to strike out on his own and build his own real estate company just before a huge recession. And the failures, the pressures, the shame really took its toll over time until he stopped working altogether and really left my mom holding all of the financial responsibilities for our family. And I recall in middle school, making a really clear decision, maybe my first brief of sorts. And that decision was that instead of being the shy brown outsider in the corner of every party or the black top at school, I was going to do everything in my power to fit in, belong, and succeed. And that really fueled the course of my high school years, my college years, and into my work and the beginnings of my career. And in 2020, in many ways, I was at the top of my game. I was one of 8 partners leading Goodby Silverstein Partners. And during this time, it was named Fast Company's, most innovative agency in the world for our work fighting racial bias among law enforcement. It was so timely, and it predated everything that happened and started to unfold in 2020. Then, just days after the killing of George Floyd, when our leadership was so focused on bracing the business, saving jobs, ensuring that, we remained profitable and therefore solid for the company. We weren't looking up. I wasn't looking up. I wasn't even looking around until a young Black strategist at our agency wrote an all-agency email calling out our agency leadership for our silence. That shook me to the ground. And it also set off a chain of events across our agency for the better eventually, but in the moment, it was hard to see what was happening and what was unfolding around us. One of my colleagues, a strategy director, sent me a link to a film called The Color of Fear. And in it, it's a documentary of a group of men from decades ago in the 90s, representing a spectrum of races. They were sitting in conversation with each other over the course of a weekend, talking to each other about their experiences with race and really deeply listening to one another. And there's a moment in the film where an Asian man talks about his experience, a memory of him waiting in line at the grocery store. He's next in line, but the cashier looks beyond him to the person behind him and says, "Next customer." And he talks about the invisibility and shame he feels in that moment. And as I watched this with my family, the film, something in me unzipped. I was flooded by my history, my own history of struggles with invisibility, being overlooked, underestimated as an Asian, as a woman in an industry led by men. But I was also gripped by something else as well. It's what I call guilt by assimilation. Since that 8th grade moment, I had worked so hard to belong in the system, to achieve within the system, that I no longer saw the system. It was purely the oxygen that I was breathing. And that's what culture is. It's invisible, and we breathe it in. And what swarmed within me was seeing my own complicity, defending a system that wasn't designed for me, using my invisibility when it worked in my favor, accepting the system as a part of doing business. And the thing is that once you have an aha like this, a realization, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And that's what happened to me in 2020. And so I wrote a brief. I think I would refine this brief if I were to write it today, but it kicked off a lot of good change within me, and and hopefully those ripple effects with me in the position of leadership. I attended a course with liminal, who was the filmmaker who made The Color of Fear, and he said something very poignant in the course. He said, as long as we're always solving for things, coming up with ideas, solutions for any kind of issue that is meaningful for us, that is important to change, as long as we are coming up with innovations, it allows us to distance ourselves from the real change that exists between people. Real, lasting, and meaningful change. It allows us to check the box that we're doing something. And that really hit me, that as long as my work was working with campaigns fighting racial inequality, gender inequality, other huge causes that I care about, it allowed me to check the box with the excuse of, oh, I'm working towards it, versus really getting in under the skin of things and changing things between people and changing myself as a result. So I wrote a brief that really was built around liminal's insight that solutions are important, but true equity and inclusion requires relational leadership. And so I need to give the most vulnerable people that I lead direct access to power. I need to speak less, listen more, ask more questions. I'm ready to create brave spaces for truth and change as a strategist, as a facilitator, as a partner. And most importantly, my example is to stay in the messiness, stay in the conversation, especially when it gets fraught, frustrating, and even infuriating. Do not leave the conversation. Listen and stay in it. So I called this brief Relations, Not Just Solutions. And since then, this brief has allowed me to really work on accelerating closing the pay gaps, giving all of our junior employees and those from traditionally underrepresented groups direct access to me. I flipped the way I spend my time with my people, and a lot of good outcomes have come out of it. And I have not been doing it alone. But the fact is the deeper the work, the more there is to be done, because real equity happens in the small everyday moments, not just through big sweeping gestures. And so what shifted for me was how I show up every single day, every single meeting, guided by this brief. So I'm going to ask you again, what do you want? This isn't about necessarily my story, because again, my story is not yours. My circumstances are not yours, but this question is the same, and it is the driving question of the life brief. What do you want? And if an answer has come up inside you, allow it to come out on the page, because that is what is the important start of this practice, to allow yourself to be honest with yourself. Allow what you want to come out, as messy as it is, because when it comes out onto the page, you get to be in relationship with it. You get to mold it, shape it, sharpen it, scratch it out, start over. Because when we look at what we've written, it speaks to us, it pulls us in, it invites us to come in deeper, to be more honest, and to be more brave. So I'm going to take you through the arc of how this practice works. You're already doing it if you've written anything down. So congratulate yourself for that. But there are 3 parts to this practice. The first is allowing yourself to get messy. And when you do, then you can get clear, but only if you are willing to open up to your own mess. And then comes the easier part. Yes, we tend to think that action might be the hardest, but it's not. If you've done the work up front in getting messy and getting clear, actions naturally fall out. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's get into the practice in deep. So in strategy and with the life brief, it is always about tuning into curiosity, looking at your own life and your own leadership with a beginner's mind. Set aside your emotions, your fears, your assumptions about who you are, what people think of you, how the world works, so that you can see your situation and your circumstances from a completely fresh perspective. This is so important because when we do this, we unlock a desire to explore deeper instead of tuning into anxiety or the things that we fear. When we lean into our curiosity, we unlock the answers to what will truly make our leadership worth it. And again, at the center of those ripple effects. So start with questions, not answers. I think we live in a culture, especially one that is speedy, fast, reactive, that we always need to jump to answers. And what I'm beckoning and inviting you to do here is to start with questions. I gave you the driving one. What do you want? But I want you to also listen within yourself. What are the questions? For me, what am I devoted to? What do I believe in? What kind of legacy do I want to leave once I leave the agency, whenever that might be? What do I want people to remember about my leadership? Don't jump to the practical side of things or how much would need to change or what else you would need to do. Just start listening. This is a practice of deep listening for the natural voices and inspirations that bubble up from within you. And each question might lead to more questions. That's okay. It's a beautiful path that's going to keep pushing and nudging you down a road to clarity. Because here's the truth that I found, that I've lived. The answers we seek lie in the questions that we tend to bat away, override through distractions or busyness or our to-do lists. The important questions that we tend to avoid. We love to run towards the urgent, the fires, and leave the important to another day. But this practice is about allowing those important questions to come in, to sit with them, and allow your answers to bubble up. You don't have to work hard. You just need to create the space. And lean into the agitation. We all want comfort, but comfort is the enemy to change. Comfort is a cornerstone of privilege. I want you to lean into the agitation, the tension. We know in marketing and advertising and creativity that the tension points to where the good stuff is, the juicy stuff. So, what's gripping you in this moment? What has been gripping you? Meaning sticking in your mind, but perhaps you've been pushing it away, pulling it off? Where are you playing it safe as a leader? What parts of you are you hiding? What are you ready to shed? What are you ready to shift? Again, if anything has naturally come up as you hear each of these questions, I want you to put it down in writing. And if the question, what you want, what do you really, really want, is too agitating in this moment, I want you to shift to an easier set of questions, perhaps more immediate. How you want. How do you want to show up as a leader? How do you want people to experience you? And really importantly, how do you want to serve? How do you want to serve your company? How do you want to serve your team? How do you want to serve your employees? And how do you want to serve what's beyond you and yours in the greater community, in the greater good? Write it down, capture it now. Even if it's just whispering, or maybe it strikes you like lightning. One more time. This phase of it, getting messy, I have a lot more exercises, but these are the most essential ones. Your curiosity, your beginner's mind. Tune into those, because the more you generate, and if you generate it daily, 5 minutes every morning, you will have a collection of ingredients that you can take into the next step, which is about getting clear. This does not take a long time. It just takes your presence and the spaciousness and the ability to drop in to what I call your knowing place. At least that's what I call it for my kids. But your knowing is different than knowledge. Knowledge is overrated. Knowing is a deeper place, and the exercise is to get there. So the second part is getting clear. Once you have your ingredients in writing, you get to sift through them. And you get to step back and note what's come through you. You get to look for insights, ahas, look for new perspectives, new ways of seeing your very familiar circumstances, again, with that beginner's mind. And in the case of our life briefs, insights can feel like secrets being confessed, or they can set you up for leaps of intuition. But I want you to tune into your ingredients once you've collected them and really understand them, see them through new eyes, and then start to sort and separate out what's meaningful from what's meaningless, or what I call meaning light, meaning, it's there, it's housekeeping, but it might not be the stuff that makes you feel alive. And what we're searching for here is the aliveness. And aliveness doesn't necessarily feel comfortable. It also doesn't have to feel hard. But for me in 2020, the call, the grip to shed the masks that I had been wearing, it was too hard and impossible maybe to ignore. And so as you separate out the meaningful, the must-haves, that's the beginning elements of your brief. And once you have the ingredients, the most meaningful ingredients, the most must-have ingredients of your brief, that's when you get to play with them and push them. And I like to encourage people to put it on paper, 5 declarative statements, starting with the words, I choose, I'm ready, or I am. And the reason we put it into the affirmative, because these are not wish lists. These are not bucket lists or dream goals. These are things that you're ready for right now to welcome into your leadership. And then once you have those 5 statements, you get to push them in 3 ways. You need to go deeper, get bolder, and make them sharper. And then you get to name your brief. For me in 2020, that name was relations, not just solutions. And that reminded me to show up every day in the agency and be relational, see people, listen to people, hear them, walk in their shoes so that I could create a better environment for them to grow up, to accelerate their careers, and shifting my time to do that. So again, you want a name for your brief that is sticky and sharp and unforgettable so that it tattoos within you and you can't forget it. So as in creative briefs, words matter. So you want to make yours sing. Sticky, sharp, bold, honest. That's what we do as strategists. That's when we write briefs, because one word can make the difference of a meh brief, okay, to a really motivating one that gets your fire in the belly going, ones that you want, get you up out of bed in the morning. And so that is the goal, is to make it sharp, sticky, and activating. So past briefs of mine, relations, not just solutions. For work in general, to walk a path of fulfillment, not just achievement. To love my kids through accountability. Holding them accountable is what real love looks like. Not avoiding, not being permissive. Loving through accountability is also how I operate with my employees. Be rich in relationship. That's my wealth brief. I've learned over time that richness can come in many forms, many ways, but relationships are where I want true wealth. Take back my time. That is a brief solely for me. I give a lot of my time away, and this year I was ready to take it back for myself and then change the game. My relations, not just solutions brief has evolved into changing the game, changing the systems to create win-win-wins for my clients, for our agency, for our people. So here's the brilliant part. Getting active is where we get to walk the walk of our briefs, harness our sense of personal agency, and understanding that it is we who get to create our own paths in life and in leadership, not our circumstances that create them for us. We are not victims of our situations. And this is the part where we get to mobilize, denounce fear, denounce anxiety, confusion, doubt, so that you can really manifest and make possible what you envision in your briefs. And here's the good news. Action is a byproduct of clarity. This is the same thing that happens for our clients in business. Once you are clear about what matters, about what you want, about how you want to show up, you naturally aim your attention and your action towards those things. It's very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Suddenly you know how to shape your day, the role that you're going to play in this meeting, in each conversation. So this is not where the hard work happens. Everything unfolds and follows from your brief. because you will have a shift as soon as you get clear of perspective, of focus, of action. And the actions that you need to take can be absolutely tiny. And in fact, I invite you and encourage you to start with the tiniest actions that you can think of. Something so irresistibly small that it's unignorable, inexcusable, that you simply cannot avoid it. For me, at the start, it was just reading one article, maybe having one conversation. Eventually, it became really speaking truth to the powers that be and really holding brave spaces to call out the elephants in the room, to talk about the things we were avoiding as a leadership group. And it's still happening. So start small, but do it daily. It's not enough to do one big thing every blue moon. It's more important to keep that momentum going. And it's so fascinating what unfolds that you would not expect, that you cannot plan for, that is surprising and serendipitous as you start walking that path. And here's the thing, life is a dance. Once you start walking on this path, your actions will invite new reactions and new interactions with everyone around you. This is the dance. You don't have to control everyone around you. In fact, you can't. We all know that. But when you shift your dance, everyone shifts theirs. And I have seen this with my family. I've seen this with my husband. I've seen this in my company, at the agency, with our clients. So know that huge effects can be generated by small acts, small shifts that you make as a leader. And your brief will evolve as you evolve. So I want this is a really important point. This isn't a one and done thing. Every time you look at your brief and the farther you walk into it and practice it, it will speak to you. It will say, oh, this part isn't quite right anymore. I would change this word to that, or I'd eliminate this line altogether. Or really, I'm in a new space. My brief is all around me. It's automatic, it's organic, it's natural. So now it's time to write a new brief. And I have written briefs for every part of my life. And each time I've been met with surprise and serendipity. And when we let go of our need to control everything, we open up ourselves to unexpected twists and unimaginable gifts. And that has been true time and time again. So what I like to tell everyone is you can't have it all. And I don't know what that means anyways, but you can have all that matters to you. The key is knowing and getting clear about what matters to you as a leader. So I like to say that truly high functioning leaders are not just high functioning in one dimension of their leadership. They harmonize between growth of the business, growth of their people, and they use their clarity to create ripple effects from their decisions and their actions. They're clear about the strengths they possess and how to leverage those strengths to serve the people that they lead or the clients they serve. Rather than simply viewing leadership as an intellectual pursuit or a business achievement, goals to be attained and conquered, high-functioning leaders have the ability to hold multiple dimensions, all of these dimensions, weaving them together in a way that becomes a rich and fulfilling legacy, not just for themselves or their companies, but through all the parts of the communities they touch and the customers they serve, and maybe even beyond that. So thank you for spending this time with me. I'm not great at looking at chat while I share, but before we get to a few questions, if this is a practice you're keen on or interested in, as Surin said at the top, I have a book coming out. It still feels like a long time away, but every 2 weeks I send reflections and exercises. If you sign up at thelifebrief.com, and you'll be the first to know about the book. And then this clever QR code, I've never used this before, but I'm launching an online course on Maven. And if you're interested in that, you can sign up for that as well. And I will let Surin guide some of the questions that have come up in the chat.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. We really appreciate it. We're inspired by the Life Brief and how this can be applied to future ready leaders. As Bonnie mentioned at the top of the call, there is a lot of change happening, and we need to be ready as leaders. And the Life Brief is a beautiful, simple way to kickstart that process so we can begin to reflect and drive change within our own companies. I want to encourage you to attend our next webinar. The date is going to be announced for March. It's going to be with Matt Rivets. He is founder of the Sleeping Giants movement. He's going to be sharing his experience leading a global change movement for more responsible advertising. And we hope that a lot of you will join. I'm just so pleased to have Bonnie do this with us today, because she really resonated with the mission of Future Ready CMO and the need to drive change. And it's just a beautiful alliance. And I want to wish her all the success with the book and with the course. And want to thank you for her time today. As far as questions from the group, really what I saw was a lot of beautiful reflections from many of you. And I do see there's a question from Amanda Lee, actually. Hi, Bonnie, I have a question. Where do you see people get tripped up by this process, and how do you advise them?
I think there are probably a couple points, but what comes up intuitively and most readily is starting. I think there's a lot of doubt and disbelief. I think it's hard to start. People are afraid of what are my answers gonna be at the end of those questions? Will I want something that's not possible? That might hurt people around me. And what I would say is, every time on my retreats, in my workshop, when people have created space and the permission to ask the questions, what do I want? Something beautiful has come out of it. And then as they start walking the path, that surprise and serendipity I talked about is real. They realize, oh, it wasn't that terrifying. And in fact, it was received warmly, surprisingly. Now, there are some moments that you have to confront, but they're only hard because our minds tell us stories, and we have some real deep limiting beliefs about the way that the world works, that this practice has demonstrated again, time and again, that the world is there to surprise you. The people in your life will surprise you. Thanks for asking that, Amanda.
We have a couple more questions. Casey, do you give people a sense of how to measure their progress, like a Life Brief KPIs, for lack of a better term, or do you feel it's more intuitive?
I love this. The business people love to ask about measurement, progress. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? This is a practice about being in relationship with yourself. You're the only measure. So this is not about checking the boxes or hitting milestones. This is a practice of being in tune with yourself and your intuition, getting through fear, getting through confusion, and connecting with your innermost intuition, if you will, the knowing, as I said. That is the progress, and the practice is, are you speaking from this place? Are you acting from this place, whatever that place is? So you are the measure. I'm sure that wasn't satisfying, but it is true.
I think it was a good question. Thank you for asking it, Casey. John Fung says, what are the signs that you feel you've made progress on your brief? And then start to think about pivoting to another life brief and to not feel overwhelmed with layers of brief for yourself.
That's a great question, John, because I've written so many briefs. I again, as Mary said, it's an embodied feeling, right? I write a brief for what is gripping me in this moment, and in 2020, that was the moment that was gripping me. There have been times when it was my marriage that was gripping me, or how to raise adolescents in teenagers in the pandemic. That was what was gripping me. So the briefs really come out as a result of dancing in my life and being in tune with, where do I need clarity? Where do I need to do this practice and aim my attention? How do I get clear so that my actions are really centered and in line with my values? So again, it's an intuitive thing. And this is a practice of listening and being tuned in, not just going sleepwalking through life or having the habits, but really understanding what's calling to you right now, right here.
Thank you. Christine, there's a couple more questions. Christina Jenkins, on the topic of being in tune with our intuition, are there any good inspiration, resources, or content themed around that you could point us towards and how to do so?
That's a great question. I'm not great with resources, but I think the things that have really helped me along the way, I read wisdom, teachers. Roger Housden is a poet and a wisdom writer that I tune into. Thich Nhat Hanh, I'm pretty meditative. And I say meditative versus I do meditation. My husband does meditation and I am always in awe, but I'm meditative in that I really tune into people who can take me to a deeper place within myself. And those teachers I know are all around us. And sometimes, each one of us need a different tone, a different vibe. And that is open. Again, it's tuning into you. But I will give that more thought and have Surin share that out. Thanks, Christina.
And we have time for one last question. We've got a minute left. That's from Patrick. Thank you, Bonnie. Clear and beautiful. My question, can you say more about how you nurture or agitate the curiosity to get truly messy? Where do you go of that? Where do you let
That's
go?
such a great question. I usually create space in the mornings. When I'm good, and I'm not always good, but I have a lucid moment before I hop out of bed and pick up my phone and, start dialing into the world. I am most clear in the mornings, and I am most open-minded, open-hearted to my own voice in those mornings. And I allow what bubbles up there. And I have a notepad right next to my bed. And instead of going into my phone, I capture my thoughts right there. I do an exercise called the brain dump each morning. Not every morning. I'm not, always consistent, but when something grips me and I just write for 5 minutes, I allow everything to dump out so that I can go back to it in the evening. The shower is a good time. Folding laundry is a good time. Doing dishes is a good time. Commuting is a good time. It's about where we aim our attention. And if you're always filling it with distractions, the next to-do list, the next email, the next reading the report, the next binge watching on Netflix, there's infinite ways that we can distract ourselves and avoid the questions. But I find, that 10 minutes in bed is my sacred time. And it's so good to see you all these familiar names. Thank you so much for, again, giving yourself the gift of this space. Please connect with me, Bonnie at thelifebrief.com or at GSMP, which is Bonnie_Wan at GSMP or gspsf.com. It's at the top of the chat. And I am so grateful for you taking the time. I hope to reconnect with so many of these dear and familiar names.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you for embodying what a future-ready leader looks like. We have a lot of gratitude for your time. Thanks.
Thanks, Corinne.